Alright, what is up you guys, and welcome back to the Progressive Skills in English Level 2 coursebook. In today's recording we're going to be going over the listening section, so let's hop right in. Okay, here we have exercise A, activating ideas. Let me open this. Here we have look at the sports below. By the way, this is the theme of the lecture. It's sports and leisure. So which of these sports do you like? Here we have a few of them. We'll talk a little bit about them after we do A2. So listen and number the sports in the order that you hear them. Okay, so we'll hear them and number them as we go. So let's go.
Track 4.1.
1. These children have just finished a swimming race. 2. These boys are playing basketball. One team has just scored. 3. These boys are rowing. They are moving very fast through the water. 4. These children are playing table tennis. It is a very fast game. 5. These children are starting a running race. It is probably a short race, a sprint. 6. This woman has just cleared the bar in the high jump. 7. This man is about to throw the discus. The sport is very old. 8. The woman is about to throw the javelin. The sport began in ancient times. 9. The girls are learning karate. It is a form of fighting.
Right, so now that you're a little bit familiar with the sports here, I'd say that my favorite is probably swimming. Okay, so tell me what you think. Let's go to exercise B now, understanding the organization of a lecture. So we're going to be listening to the introduction of a lecture, right? And we're going to have to write the three main points that the lecturer is going to talk about. Okay, so you're going to listen to it once. Here we go.
Track 4.2.
Today I'm going to talk about sports. As you know, there are many different sports, but it is possible to classify them into groups. The verb classify comes from the noun class. So classifying means putting things into classes or groups. So, first today, I'm going to classify sports into 3 groups and then give examples of each type. Then I'm going to explain the reason for classification. Why do we classify sports in physical education training?
Right, so the different topics when classifying sports are 1 will be groups, and 2 we'll talk about the examples, and 3 we're going to talk about the reason for classification. Oops, wrote that wrong. Classification, right? In, we'll say PE training, right? Physical education training. Okay, so groups, examples, and reasoning for classification in PA training, right? Now let's go to exercise C, understanding a lecture. We're going to listen to the whole lecture now, or a little bit of it, around 3 minutes, so gotta be careful. And we're going to check for these statements and see if they're true or false. And if they're false, we're going to have to correct them, okay, and write the true ones. So get ready, let's go.
Track 4.3.
Okay, so first, classification. There are 3 groups of sports. The first group consists of racing sports. Racing, of course, means trying to go faster than another person. The second group is opponent sports. An opponent is someone you play against. Finally, there are achievement sports. Achievement means reaching a certain level, a good level. So, we've seen that sports can be classified into 3 groups. Now, what sort of sports go into each category or group? Let's look at the first group, racing, trying to go faster than another person. There are two subcategories here. Some racing sports just use the power of the human body, for example, running and swimming. Other sports in this category use the power of machines. Cycling uses bicycles. Motor racing uses cars, for example. What about the second group? Opponent sports. Once again, with opponent sports, there are two subcategories. The opponent might be an individual or a team. For example, we usually play tennis against one person, but we play football against a team. Finally, let's turn to achievement sports. In achievement sports, there are also two subcategories. Sometimes we try to reach a target. For example, in golf, we try to get a white ball into a small hole. So that's a target sport. Sometimes we try to achieve a particular quantity, distance, for example, or height. In the long jump, we try to jump farther than all the other people. In the high jump, we try to jump higher. Okay, so to sum up, we have heard about three categories of sports: racing, opponent, and achievement. We have seen that each category has two subcategories. In racing, it's human body and machine. In opponent sports, it's a person or team. And in achievement sports, it's target or quantity. Okay, I hope you have understood the classification. But why do we classify sports in this way in physical education training? Well, each type of sport teaches a child something different. Racing sports teach children to rely on themselves, to try harder, even if they are feeling physical pain. Opponent sports teach children to react more quickly and to think about the actions of another person. Achievement sports teach children to reach for a target, something which is hard to achieve, but achievable. Next week, we're going to look at ball games in detail.
Alright, so now that we know a lot about sports and different categories and subcategories, let's take a look at each statement below. So A, we have there are four groups of sports. Is this correct? Answer is no, it's false, and the correct one is there are, we'll say, three. Okay? There are three. Second statement, we'll say we have the three groups of sports are racing, opponent, and level. Again, this we'll say is false. We have racing, right, you guys? And then we have opponent. What else do we have? Oh yeah, and we'll say achievement. Okay? So instead of racing, opponent, and level, we have racing, opponent, and achievement. Right? C, we can divide racing sports into human body and machine. This is true. Yes. Cycling is a racing sport in the human body category. We'll say nope. This is false. It's actually in the machine category and not the human body. So we'll say in the machine category. Okay? Let me add a full stop here as well. E, tennis and football are both opponent sports. And for that we'll say yes, tennis and football are both opponent sports. F, golf is a target sport. Again, this is true. G, long jump is an achievement sport, but high jump isn't. This is actually wrong. The statement is wrong. They are both achievement sports. So they are both achievement sports. Okay? H, children learn to deal with pain when they are racing. This is true. Yes. Oops, my bad. I'll do that. T, I, children learn to react quickly in achievement sports. This is actually wrong. They learn to react quickly in opponent sports. So we'll say they learn to react quickly in opponent sports. Okay? So again, one more time, A is F because there are 3 groups, not 4. B is F, false, because there is no level sport. It's racing, opponent, and achievement. C, we can divide racing sports into human body and machine. This is true. D is false because it's in the, or cycling is in the human body category, is in the machine body category and not the human body. Okay, so machine category. E, tennis and football are both opponent sports. That's correct. Golf is a target sport. Correct as well. Long jump is an achievement sport, but high jump isn't. That's false. They are both achievement sports. Children learn to deal with pain when they're racing. Yep. And children learn to react quickly in achievement sports. That is false because they learn to react quickly in opponent sports. Okay? So that was exercise C. Excuse me. Now I'll get back to exercise D. Let's first do exercise E here. So let's take a look at the vocab box before we move on. Here we have achievement, alone, branch. Here branch means a part of a diagram. Game, mountain, opponent, racing, result, and win. Okay? So now let's go to identifying vowel sounds. Okay. So you guys know all of these different vowel sounds. We've talked about them quite a lot, and you've heard a lot about them in the past. So I'm gonna play this twice, okay? I'll first let it play, I'm going to do a thing, and then the second time, I'm gonna tick them. I want you to try and tick them the first time, and check your answers when I play it the second time, and do it with you. So, here we go.
Track 4.4.
Against. All. Class. Classify. Classification. Quantity. Racing. Target.
Right, I hope you're able to get at least a few ticks down. Now I'm going to play it one more time and I'll solve it as we go.
Track 4.4.
Against. All. Class. Classify. Classification. Quantity. Racing. Target.
Target, yeah, it's around here. Okay, so this is the correct answer. Now let's go back to exercise D. Here we have a diagram basically classifying sports into different categories and examples. So here we have racing, opponent, and achievement. Okay, so for racing, we know that you could use the human body and machine. So example for the human body could be running, right? We could also say swimming, and we could also say a marathon. It's a sprint using the human body as well. It's a long sprint, or not a long, basically long distance running. Okay? And then we have machine racing. So think of a machine, anything that helps the human race faster. So that could be cycling, right? When you use a bicycle. It could also be rowing. It could also be car racing. And it could also be motorcycle or motorbike racing. Okay? It's also a machine. Now let's move on to opponent. Actually, before we move on, you got to understand that when I'm talking about racing, these are 3 important points that you should know, is that you rely on yourself, you try harder, and you also have to deal with pain in human body racing and machine racing as well. Okay? Then we have opponent. So for opponent sports, we have individual and team. So opponent here does not mean an enemy in a sense that you have to kill somebody. Okay? It seems, or not seems, it's basically competition. Okay? Either friendly or not friendly, but there is no killing involved at all. Right? So for individual opponents or sports, we could say tennis. We could also say table tennis, you guys remember. We could also say boxing, and maybe something like judo. Okay, all of these are opponent sports for an individual. What about team? Okay, teams, there are a lot of team sports. So you have football, we could also say basketball, we could also say volleyball, and we can even say baseball. Okay? And finally, we have achievement sports. We have two sections here as well. So we have target and quantity. Okay, so target is when you want to hit a specific target, whether that be a hole in the ground or a hole upwards, it doesn't matter, or a certain number. It's a target that you have to hit. The other type that we have is quantity, right? So how far can you throw the ball, for example, or how high can you jump? Okay? So for target, we can say golf. We could also say archery, right? You guys know what archery is. A sport that is not really a sport, something that's for fun, you guys probably heard of it, is beer pong. I don't know if you guys know what that is. Check it out later, maybe. And then we have, for quantity, we'll say long jump. We could also say the high jump. We could say javelin. And finally, we could say hammer throw. Okay, so here is when you reach for the target. Okay, and for opponent is you have to react or think about the other person. So in boxing, you have to constantly be thinking about the other person and even react in a certain way when punches are being thrown at you left and right. Okay, so this was the first part. Now let's move on. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on. Here we have exercise A, reviewing vocabulary. So listen to some sentences and tick the best way to complete each sentence. Right, so we're going to be listening to some sentences and we'll tick the best way to complete each one as we go along. So I'll only play this once. Let's go.
Track 4.5.
1. As you. 2. There are many different. 3. But it is possible to classify. 4. We can classify sports into 3. 5. Firstly, there are racing sports. Racing, of course, means trying to go faster than another. 6. For example, racing sports include running and. 7. The second group of sports is opponent sports. In an opponent sport, you play against an individual or a. 8. For example, tennis is an opponent sport, and so is. 9. Finally, there are achievement sports. In achievement sports, you try to reach a certain. 10. The high jump is an achievement sport, and so is the long.
So is the long jump. Okay, so pretty simple exercise. Now let's go to exercise B. Let's read the pronunciation check first. Do we have it here? Yeah, we do. So here we have hearing vowels. These two diphthongs are very similar. They both end with a sound like O. So here the two different sounds are, you guys notice when I say no, go, that O sound, right? As opposed to when I say now, that ow sound. So we're trying to differentiate between O and ow. Okay? So let's go to the audio. Look at these words from the course so far. Listen and tick the correct column. Again, pretty simple exercise. So this is O, okay, if there's any confusion, and this is ow. Okay, so here we go.
Track 4.6.
Alone, although, flower, most, mountain, opponent, power, smoke.
Right, so pretty simple. Alone, O, although, again, O, flow, ow, so this, most, mountain, ow, apo, O, power, again, ow, and smoke, O. Pretty simple so far. Let's go to the vocab box. Here we have against, classification, classify, deal with, individual, quantity, reach for, react, rely on, target, and team. Okay, now let's go to exercise C, identifying a new skill. Do we have skills check here? Yeah, we do. Okay. So you guys remember we talked a little bit about diagrams and these different branching diagrams. So we're going to learn how to make notes that are used in this way. So lecturers often classify items into categories. I mean, you guys have seen that in lectures, the lecturers will often try and talk about different items in categories, right? So making a note like this helps you memorize and retain information much better. So writing diagrams like this are great for classification as well. Okay, so for example, like we talked about sports, we have racing, opponent, and achievement, and subcategories include, for example, body, machine, individual and team, etc. You get the idea, okay? So you'll hear lecturers say there are 2, maybe 3, 4 kinds of, and it'll keep going. So you know, that's how you start the diagram. So you make the diagram with the correct number of branches and complete each branch as the lecturer goes on. Okay? Also, you have to keep an eye for examples. Okay, so whenever you hear an example, write it down, and later, after you're done with the lecture, try maybe Google and find more examples. Okay, so now we're going to listen to the start of a lecture about sports, and this will probably be similar to the one that we just heard a couple minutes ago. Here we go.
Track 4.7.
I'm going to talk to you today about sports. I'm going to start by classifying sports into 3 categories. The first group consists of racing sports. Racing, of course, means trying to go faster than another person. The second group is opponent sports. An opponent is someone you play against. Finally, there are achievement sports. Achievement means reaching a certain level, a good level.
Okay, so I'll talk about 4 points on how to start your diagram, right? So first of all, this is called a branching diagram, okay? Different branches, okay? And how many branches should the diagram have? Well, for this, there's no set rule, but you just have to know that it totally depends on the number of categories that the lecturer defines or talks about. Okay, so in this case, she was talking about 3: racing, opponent, and achievement. Thus, we now have 3 branches. Okay, what should you write on the branches themselves? On the branches, you should write the topics or the categories. Okay, and what do you write under each category? You could write subcategories or examples if there are no subcategories. Okay, pretty good so far. Now let's go and practice that new skill in exercise D. Okay, so listen to the start of some more lectures on different subjects and organize your notes in each case. Okay, so I'm gonna pause after each section and we'll complete these together and then we'll move on, okay? So listen carefully, and I want you guys to pause the video, make your own notes, do your own diagram, and then check your answers with me. So here we go.
Track 4.8.
Today we are looking at the classification of literature. There are 4 main kinds of literature. Firstly, we have novels, secondly, plays, thirdly, poetry, and finally, of course, biography or autobiography.
Firstly,
Okay, before we move on. Okay, so he talked about literature, and it's divided into 4 different categories, right? So we have novels, plays, poetry, and biography, or as he said, autobiography. Okay? Move on to lecture B now.
in this lecture, I want to classify the mass media. I'm going to divide it into 2 categories. On the one hand, there is the broadcast media. On the other hand, we have the print media. Of course, we can subdivide each of these categories. Broadcast media has 3 subcategories. It consists of television, radio, and nowadays, the Internet. Print media contains newspapers and magazines.
Okay, I'll pause that now. So for lecture B, the lecturer is talking about the mass media, right? And it's divided into 2 categories. We have broadcast and print. Okay, and for broadcast and print, it goes on to subcategories. So for broadcast, we have things like TV, radio, and the internet. While for print, we have newspapers and magazines. Okay, let's move on.
We're going to look at elements in this lecture. Elements are the basic building blocks of our world. Carbon is an element. Hydrogen is an element. Oxygen is an element. But how can we classify elements? There are over 100 elements, but we can classify all elements into just 3 groups. The first group is metals. The second group is non-metals. And the third group is gases, but not all gases. Only inert gases. That's INERT. It means they don't change. Let's think of a few examples of each category. Iron is a metal. Zinc is a metal. Carbon is a non-metal. Hydrogen and oxygen are gases, but they are not inert, so they are non-metals. Inert gases include helium, with the symbol He. You find helium in balloons.
Okay, so for lecture C, he talks about elements, and it's divided into 3 different categories. So we have metals, non-metals, and inert gases. And inert gases are gases that don't change. Okay, so for metals, we have iron and zinc. We probably have more examples, but these are the ones he stated. And for non-metals, we have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And for inert gases, we have helium. Okay, let's move on.
We can classify all living things into 5 categories. The categories are called kingdoms. In the first kingdom are animals. In the second kingdom, we have plants. The third kingdom consists of fungi. The animal kingdom can be subdivided into many categories, but I'm only going to talk about 4. Mammals, birds, fish, and reptiles. There are many examples of mammals, of course. We are mammals, humans. Bats are mammals. Whales are mammals, although some people think they are fish.
Okay, he didn't keep going. Interesting. So for lecture D, he's talking about living things, and living things can be classified into 3 different kingdoms. We have animals, plants, and fungi. Okay? And for animals, it is divided into 4 different categories: mammals, birds, fish, reptiles. There are obviously more, but we're talking about what he stated. Okay? So for mammals, some examples could be us, humans, bats, and whales. And don't get confused, whales are not fish. They are considered mammals. Okay? So that was exercise D. Now let's move on, you guys. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to exercise E, identifying a new skill. Let's start with skills check 2. Here we have using prepositions after verbs. So some verbs are always followed by a preposition. Preposition is something like at, up, for, after. Okay? So you should learn to recognize the sound of the whole phrase, and it'll stick to your brain once you start speaking English consistently. So some examples include consist of, rely on, sum up. You can see off, on, up, okay? So some verbs are followed by different prepositions that change the meaning of the word. So if I say look at, that means, right, use your eyes to look at something. Look up means find out what it means. Look for means try to find out, and look after means take care of. Okay, so you see how changing the preposition changes the meaning of the word. Okay, so we have two styles now. So normal preposition, just the word mean consist of, rely on, sum up, that's normal. But with some verbs, when you add a different preposition, it changes the meaning. Okay, now let's take a look at some exercises. So listen and number the verb plus preposition phrases. So let's listen to this, and we'll number them as we go along. Here we go.
Track 4.9.
1. Today we're going to look at types of literature.
Look at.
2. Children must learn to rely on themselves.
Rely on.
3. OK. So, to sum up the problems...
Basically, in conclusion, to sum up.
4. I'm going to mention a few points, and I'd like you to write down the most important one in your opinion.
Write down. Okay.
5. First of all, we're going to hear about racing sports.
Hear about.
6. Children should try to reach for a target.
Reach for.
7. I don't want to go into detail here. 8. The spacecraft took off at 10:32 a.m. precisely.
Took off or take off.
9. Remove the old printer cartridge and put in the new one.
Put in.
10. Traditional festivals are dying out all over the world.
Die out. Okay, so these are the verbs and prepositions in correct order. So now let's go to exercise 3. Listen to some more verb plus preposition phrases. These verbs are probably new to you. Can you hear the preposition in each case? Again, we're going to number the prepositions themselves and not the verbs. Here we go.
Track 4.10.
1. Come about.
Come
2.
about.
Act for. 3. Box in. 4. Look into. 5. Fly at. 6. Put off. 7. Let on. 8. Work out. 9. Climb down. 10. Set up.
Set up. Okay, so this was pretty simple just to get you started on using prepositions after verbs. Now let's take a look at the exercise, practicing new skill, exercise F. So listen to the start of some sentences and choose the correct phrase to complete each sentence. Okay, so we'll based on the letter of the sentence, we're going to choose the correct phrase. So here we go.
Track 4.11. A.
First, we're going to look at.
B.
A good reason.
You can look up.
C.
It is difficult to look after.
Very young children. That's correct.
D.
OK, let's look back.
Track 4.11. A.
First, we're going to look at.
Opponent sports.
B.
You can look up.
Details.
C.
It is difficult to look after.
Very young children.
D,
OK, let's look back.
At yesterday's lecture.
E,
People look forward.
To festivals.
F,
Researchers look for.
A good reason for the result. Okay, pretty simple. Now let's go to exercise 2. Write a preposition to complete each phrasal verb for the meaning given. So blow, and we need a preposition so that it means explode. So that means we'll say up. Okay, so blow up means explode. B is find dash, so that it means discover. So we'll say find out. Okay. C is give dash, means to return, so we'll say give back. D, go dash means rise, so we'll say go up. E, keep dash means continue, so we'll say keep on. Right? When someone says keep on moving, don't stop, that means continue. F, look dash means take care of, so we'll say look after. Okay? G, put dash means postpone or rain check. So for G, we'll say put off. Okay? H, sort dash means organize, sort out. Okay? Take dash means remove, so we'll say take off. Think. Actually, by the way, just before we move on, for I, take off has two meanings. It could be it could mean to remove or take off, as in a plane starting to move and fly. Okay? So keep that in mind. J, think dash means consider, think about. K, turn dash means start or to start something, so we'll say turn on. And L, work dash understand. Work out. Again, work out here can mean understand what someone has to say or offer, or it could mean work out as an exercise. Write a phrasal verb from exercise F2 in each phrase, or each space, sorry. So we're going to choose one, some ones from here into here. So one, we'll say try to dash the meaning of the word before you look it up in a dictionary. So we'll say work out the meaning of the word before you look it up in the dictionary. B, can you dash the money tomorrow? We'll say we'll say give back the money tomorrow. C, give me a few moments to dash the problem. This one's pretty simple. We'll say sort out the problem. D, we'll have to dash the meaning I have to go to Germany tomorrow. We'll have to put off the meeting I have to go to Germany tomorrow. 5, could you dash the television? I want to watch the news. We'll say, could you turn on the television? I want to watch the news. And F, did you dash the name of the inventor of the petrol engine? We'll say, did you find out the name of the inventor of the petrol engine? Okay, so that was exercise F, and this concludes our listening section. I'll see you in the next one, you guys. Peace out.